Hi, thanks for joining us on Calm Hearts, Calm Minds, an NOCS Heart podcast that allows us to make the mental health victories of everyday Ghanaians accessible, relevant, and relatable. We hope that you enjoy listening to us and learning lots, and we hope you do come back again to learn some more. Now, today's episode. Hi, everyone. Hi, Jemima. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm fine. Good evening.
Good afternoon from our side of the world. I know it's
Also,
evening at the end, but I'm really delighted to have you here. And for those who are just joining us, this is Calm Hearts, Calm Minds. It's a mental health awareness podcast that helps us make mental health victories more relevant, more relatable, and more accessible in our parts of the world, in our society. And I'm delighted, absolutely delighted to have our guests um this event, this show. I met her on LinkedIn, I think for just from some random posts, and then we got talking, and I'm really excited to have her here. I am your host, I'm Ofusia Deku Ama. I'm the founder of NOCS Heart. And please remember to like this video if you love it, share it with others, subscribe, and leave a comment so we can continue to make mental health victories more common, more relatable, more relevant, and more accessible in our society. So, Jemima, we cannot wait to dig in. It's a very important topic around imposter syndrome. Um,
yeah.
you feel like a fraud. But before we go into that, tell us a bit about yourself. What are you? Who are you and what do you do?
Okay, thank you so much for having me on the Calm Mind and Hearts podcast. Thank you. It's such a privilege. My name is Ilya Jimmy Mamusa. I'm a public health professional and a health advocate with a passion for sexual reproductive health rights, that is SRHR, gender-based violence, and mental health. So my work deals with young people, especially adolescents and teenagers, informing them, educating and empowering them with the right information to make informed, better and informed decisions regarding their health. So that's what I do basically. I mostly work with young people and sometimes women.
Lovely, lovely. So for those who were wondering what GBV and SRHR is,
Yeah.
Jemima has explained it to us. Thank you so much, Jemima. Now tell us why this topic is important to you. This whole topic of feeling like a fraud, imposter syndrome. Why is it important to you, Jemima, as a person?
Okay, so imposter syndrome is something that is very common, but unfortunately, people don't know it as imposter syndrome. I
Okay.
think there's a general view of people. People think it's just, when you have self-doubt, but imposter syndrome is a very important and critical issue to deal with.
Hmm.
And in fact, there's a research that shows that 70% of individuals experience imposter syndrome at one point in their life. So imagine that's
What?
a very 70% of people experience imposter syndrome at one point in their life. So it's something that it happened is a part of life. Unfortunately, it's not addressed as a critical issue.
Hmm.
So that's and for me, I think I've had my own fair share of imposter syndrome so much that I was I was able to know that okay, this thing is not normal. There has to be something about it. And
Hmm.
thank God I did the research, and that's when I found out that okay, this is imposter syndrome. And it was not too long when I discovered that it was called imposter syndrome. I was just thinking it's self-doubt, limiting
Mm-hmm.
belief, but actually that is called imposter syndrome. And it was discovered by two clinical psychologists
Okay.
called Pauline. One was called Pauline Plans, and the other was Susan I Imes.
Oh, two
So
women.
they Yeah, two women, two clinical psychologists. So they discovered that they studied high-performing women who were
Mm-hmm.
successful, and they discovered that they had this belief of they did not deserve the success and the accomplishments they had in life.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when they stumbled about imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome is very common in people, and I think especially people who have gone through trauma. So it's very common with them, and that's why it's very important. I think like it resonates deeply with me. So, and that's why it has been keen to me to talk about.
Wow. I mean, if it wasn't for this moment, I will not tell a lie. I would just feel that imposter syndrome was just self-doubt as well, and that eventually to go on its own. But because of the way you describe how serious it is and how sometimes affected with traumas in our past, and sorry, for those who may not know, traumas are not always tragic and serious. It just means that it hits you well
Yes,
enough to be a trauma. Um,
yes,
so I'm
exactly.
amazed at what you're saying. 70%, that's a big number. Um,
Yeah, that's
you-
a big
you've
number.
already started talking about the difference between imposter syndrome and self-doubt. I think maybe you can give us a bit more. How would I know that this is imposter syndrome versus this is just self-doubt? You talked about not deserving something, which is not always just doubts. Like you've done so well, but like, oh, I don't deserve this. But are there other things that we can look out for when we want to tell if we are going through imposter syndrome ourselves, or it's just fleeting self-doubt that will go away? What do you think the differences are?
Okay, so for boys, self-doubt is something that every human being experiences,
Okay.
is a minimum of life. Doubt is something that is inevitable.
Hmm.
Now, the difference between imposter syndrome and self-doubt is that self-doubt can happen, um, can just occur like
Mm-hmm.
without anything complete. You can just doubt something from a good perspective, like with a
Hmm.
positive, from a positive point of view. And
Mm-hmm.
then imposter syndrome is something that is rooted with, is rooted from trauma, from a negative perspective, is rooted from a mindset that um someone there's inadequacy,
Hmm.
or is rooted from faulty belief system. So that's
Hmm.
the difference. Now, I can have doubts about something, self-doubt. Oh, I don't think I can do this. Maybe because I've not done the work well, and I think I need to work on myself.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay, you doubting something. You're just doubting that, I don't think I can do this. But
Mm-hmm.
imposter syndrome is when you you don't you're giving reasons to why you're not capable. You're already
Hmm.
picking out negative things that can happen before you do something. Um you've already identified all the possible reasons that could go wrong, all the possible reasons that you are not qualified. So is
Hmm.
more negative, has a
Hmm.
negative
Hmm.
result. And
Hmm.
then even when you push yourself to do it, at the end of
Mm-hmm.
the day, you don't give yourself the accolades. You feel like it's just luck,
Oh,
just timing, something just happened, the moon fell in place, the stars moved around, and
wow.
abracadabra happened. So now that's the difference between imposter syndrome and self-doubt. Self-doubt happens and we can overcome it by
Mm-hmm.
just, okay, I'm going to give it a try. It really doesn't have any negative side effects, but imposter
Mm-hmm.
syndrome is rooted in a negative
Mm-hmm.
mindset. And
Mm-hmm.
most times it always have negative consequences because there's always anxiety, depression, perfectionism, trying to be here, there,
Mm-hmm.
trying not to get anxious because you don't want people to find out who you really are. And
Mm-hmm.
who you really are is just being human. But because there's a mindset there that is always telling you, oh, you're not this, oh, you're this. Don't let
Mm-hmm.
people find out. If people come too close, they'll get to know who you truly are. And
Wow. Wow. I love the example. Like, I love the example because I'm like, hey, that time was it was it imposter syndrome or was it just self-doubt? But I love the example. Self-doubt like, oh, maybe I haven't cooked jollof rice before. So
Yeah,
I may not know how to cook it. That's self-doubt. But you've
yeah,
cooked
that's
awesome
self-doubt.
jollof rice. People have told you how nice it is. You're like, my mother is a good cook. The spices
Exactly.
were nice. It rained today. Like you don't
Yes.
even take the credit. You are not,
Yes.
not like you don't want to out of humility, but you really don't believe that you did well. And wow, that's an eye opener for me because I wouldn't have thought that confidence and imposter syndrome had such a marrying because literally
Yes.
you not only have you told yourself how bad you'll be if you do it, even if you do it, you still tell yourself how bad you are or how good someone else is and how you are not. Wow, that was if there's anything I'm taking away, that example is not leaving me. So
Yeah.
great.
And funny at times we imposter syndrome comes from a place of criticism. We
Mm-hmm.
criticize ourselves a lot, and is now that's where trauma comes in. Someone who has experienced, like someone who grew up experiencing excessive criticism, negative
Mm-hmm.
criticism, have that mindset that okay, whatsoever they do, like there's always, this form of criticism that must go
Mm-hmm.
into it. And unfortunately, sometimes when it's negative, like we have negative criticism, when no matter what someone does, it's always bad. When
Mm-hmm.
that person grows, that mindset is reflected in their
Oh.
personality, their character, and how their professional life. And another thing is comparison. So when a
Mm-hmm.
child is always compared,
Mm-hmm.
when they grow up to be adults and they find themselves in the workplace, find themselves in life, there's always this comparison. You're always comparing yourself to others. You're always comparing your success to others. Even when you do things that deserve to be celebrated, that deserve accolades, you just when you compare and you see that it's not up to someone's own, you just feel I don't deserve it. Oh, I'm not there. I'm not worthy
Mm-hmm.
enough to be in
Mm-hmm.
certain clique. Or I'm not worthy to be in the room. I don't deserve
Mm-hmm.
to be here. So it all has roots in all these experiences we've gone through from childhood, from our formative years.
But
So
Jemima, isn't that the way of the African discipline? You know,
yes,
I didn't grow up having a lot of comparison. I'll be very honest about that when it comes to my parents. But I would go to school
yeah,
and people would say my mother said I didn't do well because my younger brother, who is like in class 2, and the person you're speaking with is like class 6, got A's on their math test. I'm like, they're doing 2 plus 2. You are doing 2 times 2 times like 36, you know? And you find out that comparison is quite common, or someone does really well, and they're like, yeah, but your little brother was first in class. But that's a whole different class. So I
exactly.
feel that then that means that we on this side of the world, where spare the rod and spoil the child and make sure that you are the one telling your child what's wrong so somebody else doesn't have to come and guess for the child or let them or make sure that your child doesn't in my local parlance spoil, like doesn't become
Yeah.
unproductive and useless in society because he didn't receive enough discipline. Doesn't just that put all of us at a big risk? Like, because I feel like the way most of us were brought up was either with criticism or with comparison or both. As
Yeah.
people living in on an African continent in an African country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh wow.
You're absolutely, you're totally right, Ofo. I was talking about this, I think, some other time with some people, and I said a lot of Africans are actually traumatized, to be honest, because
Mm,
African parenting has a lot of criticism, comparison. You're either compared 1 minute to the next child,
mm-hmm,
your sibling, or the child next door. And
mm-hmm.
like I said, I've also had my own share of imposter syndrome, and it was rooted in exactly this um, setting. When I
Oh.
was as the first child,
You were a
you are
firstborn
constantly,
child.
yes, so I'm
Oh, Jemima,
constantly
I am so sorry. I'm not the firstborn child. I have soft spot for firstborn children. Hey, I'm sorry. Like you were the firstborn child. Okay, please
But it
continue. I
happens
have to just chip
to
in.
all African children, though.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just saying, for the firstborn daughter, I think like it's a bit extreme because
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the first example, you can't
The
make
younger ones
mistakes,
are
and when
looking at you. Why are you
yes, you're
misbehaving?
compared.
What
You
example do you want to set for them?
exactly. So even so, I grew up knowing that I have to be watching my shoulders. Like whatever I'm doing, I have to make sure that
You don't mess
I
up.
don't make
You don't make
mistakes.
mistakes.
I don't. Yes, failure is not in my dictionary. And unfortunately, I'm human. So whenever I fail, it just feels like yes. I just reassured and reaffirm that
Wow.
belief, those thoughts, and I just affirmed all those feelings that I am not good enough. So that's how imposter syndrome grooms in most African descent, most African individuals. The criticism from your environment, from society. Yeah, and you know, in Africa, you're not just one person's child. Yeah,
Mhm.
everybody's
Yeah,
so you're
everybody's little
outside
servant.
people criticizing. People can come into your home
Mm-hmm.
not knowing what's happening and even criticize you, and to
Mm-hmm.
them that's upbringing. And you know, all these things bears roots, like it's strengthens the roots of imposter
Wow.
syndrome. That's
Wow. Wow. I mean,
why I always advocate for parents
mm-hmm.
to 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 take a different tone to parenting.
Mm,
Like, I think I'm very lucky that I was able to witness that with my parents, because I can tell you
mm.
the way my mom parenting style has changed from me to my siblings is really
Oh.
drastic. You can see the difference even
Mm,
in the products of the kind of children she has groomed. I'm
mm-hmm.
totally different from my last born, and you can see the difference in personality. That girl is so courageous. There are things she'll do, and I'm like, how do you even get this kind of mind? Like, you can see that she is not. She doesn't suffer from imposter syndrome. And when
Mm,
I sat down to analyze everything, you can see that it's rooted from all these little
mm,
factors.
mm,
So
mm.
yeah,
And
parents
it's
to do.
amazing. Wow, like guys, for those who don't know, this was not part of the question. So I'm just like I had no expectations and I just needed to ask. And a lot of I think a lot of homes you can actually see the difference between that firstborn who is either very forceful because they've been forced to be and keep everybody in check, or they are very they have little bouts of confidence and a lot of bouts of doubt. And then you have these last bonds who then probably have a different experience, which I think we could do a whole topic on African parenting and imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
But today's topic is really about healing from traumas in the past.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
so I will go to the questions that we actually prepared for this and then
Yes.
continue with that. But I'm sure more will come up. But it for me it's just eye-opening. And guys, if you didn't realize, you even saw the mental health victory that Jemima witnessed, from her to the youngest. And I think that's what we want to talk about. That it's not all doom and gloom and sad and
Yes.
bad, but you would have a victory when there's a challenge. And we want to make those victories, like what Jemima is going to share with us today, more relevant, more relatable, and more accessible to you. And everybody you share this with, please remember to share. So, Jemima, tell us, as a public health professional working with trauma survivors, what patterns have you observed between early traumatic experiences and the development of imposter syndrome in adulthood? You gave us your example. We talked about how we even feel African parenting styles are very critical. They are not all bad, guys. Just in case you are not familiar with it, it's not all bad. There are a lot of positives, but I think it's the shock of this is supposed to be normal, but this is also creating imposter syndrome later. Can you throw some extra light on it? That maybe you haven't said already. What is
Okay.
the
The
patterns you've
pattern.
observed? Yes.
Yeah. So um one of the patterns you can identify in someone who has imposter syndrome, I think the most common one is self-doubt
Mm,
and the feeling of inadequacy. And like
mm,
I said, it's rooted from, formative beliefs when a child is growing up, whatsoever the parents and the environment have instilled in that person is
mm-hmm,
who the person turns out to be. I always give this analogy. It's like a tree. Whatsoever you sow and the ground is what will come out. You can't sow an orange seed and expect an apple tree.
mm,
So when you're constantly giving that child the sense that he or she is not adequate, whatsoever he or she does is not good, it's not good enough, it's not impressive. When they come back, when they do projects, you don't, reassure
mm,
them that this is good. You don't give them positive affirmations. You don't let them know that okay, what they're doing is actually good and is that's very commendable. And
mm-hmm,
then sometimes when you neglect people's emotion, like children's I won't say children because even adults who go through.
mm-hmm,
So people that have gone through neglect, like they're emotionally neglected, physically abused, they feel there's this feeling that is being instilled in them that I'm not worthy of
mm,
I'm not worthy of affection. And then you see that when in life they exhibit um habits, they exhibit this mindset that they are not good enough. They doubt everything they do. There's negative perspective about everything. They tend to be pessimistic.
mm,
Like there's nothing that can be good. When you bring something that already they've screened and have
mm-hmm,
extracted all the negative, all the bad things that can happen because that was what their life was. When they bring
mm.
things to people who are supposed to have encouraged, acknowledged, and validated them, what
Wow.
was validated was the negative things, the negative side, the faults, the mistakes.
Mm-hmm,
So when in life, when they happen to be successful people, they just feel like this is something wrong.
mm,
This is not me.
mm,
I am someone that makes mistakes. Failure is like my thing. If this don't, can you imagine that people who have imposter syndrome don't tend to be flushed, like worried about making mistakes, failing. But whenever they succeed, like something is wrong somewhere. So
mm-hmm,
that's how the mindset has changed. So the patterns you see are self-doubt,
mm.
negativity, a feeling of
Oh,
inadequacy, fear, anxiety,
wow.
depression, and then in most cases, perfectionism. Because when you feel you're not adequate for
Mm-hmm,
something, when you feel you're not good enough for something, normal human um um reaction would be okay to fix it. So you always
mm,
see people they need to be perfect. Or because I know I'm a failure in this place, I'm going to try my best to be successful, or I'm going to try my best to fix this. So people don't
mm-hmm,
find out, people don't get to see who I
mm-hmm,
am.
mm-hmm,
And even when you are given projects, because of the fear of failure, they tend to want to be perfect, to do things in the right way. Like they stress on being perfect because they
mm,
feel their failure already. They feel that
mm,
whatever they do is going to come out negative. So
mm-hmm.
in order to counter that feeling, you see them trying to be perfect, perfect. And
Wow.
perfectionism is not bad. There's a positive and there's a negative side. And like I said, the difference with imposter syndrome is when the root cause, the the feeling about imposter syndrome is always negative. So even when something
Mm,
should be positive, they're always on the negative side. So even for perfectionism, like it's always on the
wow.
negative side for them.
Wow.
There's always
Wow.
negative um end results
I
at,
find this
at
very I mean I use the word eye-opening again because some people are just doubting themselves. I can't do it, I can't, they don't do it. But others are
mm,
also just pushing themselves to a level of perfection that should not even exist because they feel that whatever they've done is not good enough. And
yes.
It's funny because in my local parlance, we speak Akan, and Akan is a collection of languages that are Tree, Fanti, Kwapem. And Akans have a saying, Okan for Akwala, or say, it means if you praise a child, you spoil the child. So imagine we are all living by this. And I noticed some parents were like that, very critical. Like you could barely get a compliment out of them. So it's very interesting what you said. But as I said, it's not all about doom and gloom. I think we have about some few minutes where we can talk about, are there any, can you share a transformation story of someone who managed to recognize and break the cycle between their past trauma and current feelings of being an imposter, either their professional or personal life? I know you work with so many
Okay.
people and you've already talked about yourself as well, but whether it's you or someone else, can you just share an example so that people can know that this is not as bad, but it can be
Yeah.
changed?
Yes, yes. Oh, okay. Yeah. I do have a scenario, a story about a close friend of mine.
Hmm.
So this lady, when I met her in secondary school, and she was, the perfect definition of someone who has imposter syndrome. There was nothing, I think at some point she believed that she was not worthy of even living, because there were times we've had
Oh,
and she would tell me things how, you know, she was feeling inadequate. And honestly, it was reflecting in her life. We were in boarding school, so it was reflecting in everything she was doing. And she was always the topic for teachers. She was always the topic among our mates, even among junior students. And it was really, and because I don't know, I think I have a thing to like sports people who suffer from that. I don't know if it's because I went through the same thing.
sometimes it
So
takes one to
um
know one. Sometimes.
yeah, it takes one to know one. So I think there was a day I had the opportunity to have a conversation with her. There was a time she was always coming to my room, and it seems like something was really bothering her and she wanted someone to speak to. So in the course of our discussion, I got to realize that she had gone through a lot of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
She was also the firstborn. Is it criticism? Is it comparison? She had a sister that
Mm-hmm.
I think the sister was good academically. Unfortunately,
Oh,
the sister came and met her. I don't know what happened, but she met her and they were now mates. And in African homes, that's
oh
like one of the
no.
to you. Yeah, so they were now mates, and whatsoever she was doing, she was constantly compared to her sister, constantly compared
Oh,
to her mates, even in school. So there was, from family, then there was from environment, from school. It's like everything. She was just a good definition of failure to everyone. And
oh.
then I know it was really bothering her one time. I just encouraged her. I was like, okay, I think all you have to do is just take it one step at a time. Just try and improve where you can, because no one can actually change your life other than you. I don't know, we just had a very girly chit chat and something like that. So we graduated from school,
Mm-hmm.
and um I think about 4 5 years later, so this was a story I heard that unfortunately her parents passed away,
Oh,
and
shame.
um, yes, she was taken in by, I think, a close friend, a family friend or something. And then that was just what I think, news goes around, and that was what I just heard. So after a while, I think about 5 years later, one day I just came online and I just saw pictures on my phone. You know how WhatsApp there, you just see pictures and you're wondering where it's coming from. I just saw a picture of this girl. She was dressed as a queen, like a beauty queen. Several pictures. I was like, oh my! At first, I was like, what? What is this? I know. I was so surprised. I was like, what is this? This is,
Mm-hmm.
I was calling her name like, and I was so surprised. And I went in, I had to go look for her contacts,
Mm-hmm.
and started talking to her. Like, oh my God, I just saw your pictures. This
Mm-hmm.
girl had won a health beauty pageant, and
Oh.
she was there was a transformation from her looks to mindset. And I would say mindset because I had to talk to her because I know this
Yeah.
was not the
You had
person
a
I
conversation in secondary school.
secondary school. So and then I think I was going through a tough time. So it was something like it came at the right time because I needed motivation. I needed encouragement. And then I slide into her DM and I was chatting and I was like, what happened? And she was just laughing. She was like, she's so grateful for the, everything that has happened. She was lucky to be mentored by the people that took her and her sister in.
Oh.
And yes, and then they had to work on like her mindset and everything. She was like, she has struggled for a very long time, to feel she belonged and to gain this confidence. And winning a beauty pageant is not a small thing. You need to be
No.
confident. You know who you are, and so she told me everything she went through, the transformation process that had happened, and how she had to gain her power and her confidence. And I forgot to mention when we were having that conversation in secondary school, this
Mm-hmm.
girl told me about the dreams she had, like the goals she wanted in life. That's when I
Oh.
discovered that this girl she was intelligent and smart. It was
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate that she just had imposter syndrome, and it was affecting the way she lived and the way she
Mm.
interacted with people. And I feel like
Mm.
she was not just in the right environment.
Mm.
She told me things she wanted to do, goals. She was even there was a time she was actually giving me an idea about something. I told her something, and the way she presented it to me, I was like, wow, this girl
Wow.
has a way of thinking that is really incredible. And then at that point, when she was telling me about the things that she went through and what she was doing, I was like, oh my God, this is beautiful. I was so happy because it was like a testament. A word was said, and then I am seeing it like coming to
Happen.
fulfillment.
Yes.
It happened.
Wow.
And I told myself, all I need is a change of mindset to live the life I want to live. And I was going
Oh.
to face obstacles and I was going to work hard. And really, she was a good source of inspiration for me. And since then, I told myself, no matter how I feel about something, I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to let my mindset, my belief hinder me from doing that thing. So I think that's one of the strongest story I have like regarding imposter syndrome. Because till today, she is still in awe and in
Mm-hmm.
shock of the life she's living. And not
Mm-hmm.
just her, every other person who knew her
Mm-hmm.
is amazed at the kind of life she's doing and the project she's doing
Uh,
right now. And I just every day it's just a motivation. So yeah, I'm really glad to have witnessed and to be
wow.
someone to have known her at that stage and to see the result right now.
Wow. Thank you for sharing this, Jemima. Like, my cheeks now officially heard from all the smiling and the privilege you've
Yeah.
given Calm Hearts, Calm Minds to showcase this story. We are going to go on a break, guys. Jemima and I will be right back, but this is Calm Hearts, Calm Minds, and we love to make the mental health victories like Jemima's friends classmate from secondary school who is now living a totally different life and have been seriously
Yeah.
impacted by imposter syndrome. We are hoping to make some of these stories and realities more relevant, relatable, and accessible to our society. Jemima, thank you so much. We are going for a break. We'll see you very soon. Hi everyone, we are back from the break if for some reason you're not watching this yourself and you're hearing someone listening to this is Calm Hearts, Calm Minds. I am your host, Ofosia Deku Ama. Thanks for coming back on the break with us. And then please remember to like, share, and comment. And subscribe as well. I mean, the sharing is really important because you have no idea who will be thanking you quietly, especially because mental health challenges are not very loud and out there. So some people won't come back and say thank you, but you have no idea who you help when you share this podcast with others, especially the one that we are doing today with Jemima on imposter syndrome. Do you feel like a fraud? And the connection between childhood traumas and imposter syndrome. And I know this is dear to her because I asked her, let's talk about something that's dear to you. And I'm seeing it and I'm feeling it, and you should see the goosebumps. It's amazing. So we want to make stories like Jimmy Mess. We want to make stories like the ones that she knows from her profession, my engagements, and for my advocacy more relatable. The mental health victory is more relatable, more relevant, and more accessible in our
Yeah.
society. We've talked a lot about African parenting, so you know what society we are from. Thank you so much, Jemima, once again. Um,
Thank you.
I mean, if people saw the e-flyer that we created and are seeing you now, like what is GBV, SRH, SRHR,
Yes.
I keep getting it wrong. I'm actually, it's easier for me to say sexual reproductive health than SRHR. Um, Tell us a bit more about your experience as a GBV advocate, SRHR advocate as well, and how do gender-specific traumas uniquely shape the way imposter syndrome manifests? And what are some of the success stories that you've witnessed? If it's possible to talk about men and women, because sometimes people feel gender-based violence or sexual reproductive are just for women. Um, Tell us what you experience with how some of these things actually show up in with imposter syndrome in the long run. Hi, Jemima. Did you hear me?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I did. The network was a bit glitchy, but
Yes, it was a bit
I
funny at
got
my
your
end too.
question.
Yes.
So in the case of gender-based violence, yeah. In the case of come in contact with people who have experienced violence. So gender-based violence is any act of harm or activity um, done towards a person based on their gender. So
Hmm.
it could be sexual, it could be physical, it could be emotional abuse, it could be discrimination. So as long as it's on the basis of the person's gender.
Hmm.
So in the case of advocacy, I've had the opportunity to meet one or two people who have gone through, who have experienced gender-based violence, and um, violence has a way um, of leaving people with trauma,
Hmm.
and trauma has a way of expressing itself in people's life in different areas. So a very notable story would be a story of a woman who I got to meet, who was giving me her, her life story and how she was in a fixed state of dilemma and her through my like say agency or through the organization I was working with.
Mm-hmm.
So this woman, when she was a young lady, she unfortunately lost both parents. And
Oh.
sometimes you see, I feel like it all comes, it's rooted in childhood experiences. It always starts from a childhood um let's say a childhood or formative years of an individual. So when she lost her parents, she was taken in by distant relatives. And then I think this particular woman was not really her relative, but I think she just took her in. So it happened that when it was time for her to go to school, she would not go to school unless she hawks food.
Oh.
The woman had a small local restaurant, food business. So while the woman's children will go to school, she was going to hawk, and until she was done hawking before she would go to school.
Hmm.
I think what even caused this conversation was she looks like someone who was very educated. And when we were conversing, I think it, something happened that she had to write, and she was telling me, "Oh, I don't know how to write. I don't know how to read. I'm not educated." And that was how
No
conversation
way.
went to conversation, and she was giving me the backstory. Yes. So she told me how she that was what she was going through. She had to hawk, going to school. She goes to school maximum maybe 10 minutes. Sometimes school is over
Oh.
before she finished hawking, school is over, and that's how she missed schools. And at the end of the day, she could not graduate. And that woman's children went to schools and they graduated. Like it was obviously high school, so they finished. And then okay, she told the woman she wanted to go to she wanted to write. There's a way you write exams. You take some classes, you write
Mhm.
exams, you write NECO or WAEC, and then you'll be able to go to school. Even if you don't go to school, you can be able to go to poly, something like that. She
Mm.
told the woman she wanted to go to school. The woman said no, she doesn't have money to help her, this and that. So at the end of the day, okay, she was like, you need to work in my restaurant. Said,
Mm.
okay. And because she had no one, it was just her life. She had no option. That was what she was doing. She was in the woman's restaurant. Then there was a time she told me a man came to there. She was pretty. So a medical doctor approached her for marriage, and that was how that woman chased the man away. So
Oh.
she told me several things that happened to her with that woman. There was a time the woman locked her up in a room,
Oh.
puts coals and puts pepper on coals and locked her in pot. And that was how she said she in her words, she was like, I don't know why I did not die then, but I think God spared my life for a reason. And
Wow.
it was really, really hard to really hear
Mm.
experience. So people go through a lot. So someone abandoned. Um, she doesn't have anyone, no parents. Even the people who offered to help her are treating her like this. So she had already groomed. She had already there was this feeling of unworthiness
Mhm.
in her. She felt like she was unworthy of love. No one would love her. Nothing good was going to come to her life and all that. So that was how she just started living like she did not really care. And unfortunately, she got pregnant um for a man for someone, and she gave birth to a child. She gave
Mm.
birth to a child, and I think when she was about giving birth, that was when she ran away from the person she was staying with. So
Wow.
at the point of during those from when she gave birth to running away, I think she was a friend. I don't know, I can't really remember who exactly, but someone actually called her to the city. And that was
Mm.
how she found herself in the city. She came to do domestic work. And she had people who were like looking out for her. I think it was a friend who
Mm.
actually remembered her, or I don't know,
Mm.
maybe the news got to the friend and the friend
Mm.
reached out to her. And that was how she was called to the city, and she started working as a domestic staff. And because she is a good person, where she was working, the woman really liked her a
Mm.
lot, and the woman was actually a foreigner.
Mm.
Yes, so she actually cared for her. I think that was the first time she experienced someone. caring for her, and it began to change the way she perceived life to be.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, like when the woman was leaving the country, because she was in a contract, when she was leaving the country, she handed her over to a different friend who was coming into Nigeria. Oh my
Mm.
God. She said they did a lot of work on her because they knew she was broken. She felt she was feeling
Oh.
unworthy. And she did not believe in herself. Like she was always in self-doubt. And people who people who are elite and educated, they have a way of addressing issues with care, with in a mild way that is
Mm.
very um um productive in a positive way. So that was how gradually they started working on her mindset. They started sending her to school. I'm like, they paid for her school, sent her to school, whatsoever she needed, they got her a house.
Wow.
And it's actually not even staying in a different place. They made sure
Mm-hmm.
that she was staying with them. So where they were staying, they got a house for her. They changed things around her, but the mentality was still that she was not worthy,
Mm.
she was not worthy, and she did not deserve all the good happening to her. She was feeling like an imposter to be among such elite people, and
Mm.
they had to take it as a responsibility to work on that mindset. And so I think that was when they sent her to the organization. I think
Mm.
it's not actually therapy, but it was like mindset training,
Mm-hmm.
a
Mm-hmm.
coaching section. And that was when we had the time to converse and all. So at the end of the day, I think when our program had and the training had finished, we got in touch because I don't know, I'm someone who likes to keep in touch with
So
people.
wait. Let me just try and interject here. You are saying the lady had gone through all this and now she had come to a program with you. You even realized at the program that she hadn't been that educated and she told you her story. And you mentioned that you kept in touch. Tell us, tell
Yes.
us what happens. I mean, now I'm eager to know how she was able to
Yeah.
transform that hard childhood into, yeah, into something that broke the
Yeah.
imposter syndrome.
Yeah. So when I got in touch, um, there was all sorts of positive feedback. This
Mm,
this lady had a new set of mindset,
mm,
and she was confident in herself. In fact, she even took the initiative. She had this initiative, and she took the initiative to get other ladies, other young girls from from the village, and she brought them to the city, and she's training them, and she is actually caring for them. And I was really impressed. I was like, wow, because she's not just only let's say mentally stable. I don't want to use the word mentally stable, but she had grown mentally.
mm.
There was a change of perspective, and not only has she been empowered, she is now empowering other young girls like her that might have gone through similar situation. I was like, oh my God, this is really so inspiring, and this is why we do what
What
we
we
do. It
do.
was Yes, I was really,
Oh.
oh my God, it was really heartwarming to actually know that this was what she was doing. And she had gone on to do some projects and on her own. And I was like, wow, this is really good. And not just that, even the people she's staying with, they're really impressed because they feel there's this sense of fulfillment. They were able to make an impact in the life of
Mm-hmm,
someone they met who
mm-hmm,
was struggling, and
mm-hmm,
someone who did not see herself in the light that she should have, and they were able to empower her to see herself in that light and to take the power, to harness the power of um, confidence and
mm-hmm.
believing in oneself. So
Wow.
that's one of my
Wow.
my testimonies I do share with people.
It really is a testimony, Jemima. It's an amazing testimony. I mean, to have gone through that level of trauma, to have gone through that so much as a young woman, as a child, it's just amazing. And you're right, these are we could live for these moments forever because these are the reasons why we do some of the things we do, including
So imposter syndrome is actually a very limiting cages people in a place. Mhm.
yeah, yeah. Are you able to hear me, Jemima?
No, I think I lost you somewhere. Did you
Don't
say
worry,
something?
don't
Because I
worry
think the
about it.
network.
I think those of us on this side heard you pretty well. And we, as you said, it was a testimony,
Okay.
I think, yeah, as you said, is the reason why we do what we do, because you see how knowledge can actually change someone's life, and support, sometimes not just the knowledge, it's the support that people have, like your friend from secondary school and this lady as well. But Jemima, please tell us, some of us
Yeah.
may not have access to the centers, like the agency that the lady came to, may not have access to friends, or may not be able to even express to our friends that this is how we feel, and this is what imposter syndrome is like for us, or if we even think we do have it or not. So I think my question is, knowing what you know, what are some of the practical tools and strategies that you've seen work most effectively for people managing both trauma responses and imposter syndrome? Because trauma in itself is not just imposter syndrome that it can show up as. It can show up in so many ways. So you have to deal with that, and then you have to
Yes.
deal with the resulting imposter syndrome. What are some of the best things that people can do, especially in professional settings like work or church, in communities, that they can take
Mm.
steps to be better, feel better, believe in themselves better, and actually, because imposter syndrome just doesn't just say, I have doubt, it stops you from achieving things you can
Yes,
actually achieve, not just
actually.
big things you can achieve, including the
Yeah.
big things, including what you may feel maybe little things, but have a real impact on your relationships, your life. Tell us, what are some of the practical tools we can use, especially for someone who's watching this and going like, ah, this is me. I may not have gone through that trauma, that level of trauma, but this I know is me. I'm so critical, I'm so
Yeah.
perfectionist, or I just give up easily because I don't believe that. What are some of the things that people can do? Um, and when you look at your work and what has worked for people.
Okay.
And then
So
also, sorry, let me add quickly. And then
okay.
in these practical things, how does understanding the childhood trauma that people have suffered, the impact on their lives, actually help them use these tools and better? Because I always say knowledge and using the knowledge are two different things, but we have to start from somewhere. So
Mm.
please tell us what these
Yeah.
tools are and how people can
Yes.
use their understanding of what they may have gone through to help them overcome imposter syndrome.
Yeah. Okay. So I like to say that you can really not solve a problem without identifying what the problem is. So in our lives, when we notice that, okay, when you sense that this is imposter syndrome, or you're able to identify that, okay, this is imposter syndrome, you need to know the root cause. Okay, what is the root cause? Am I always feeling inadequate? Am I feeling Now this is where it's linked to our past traumas and how they show up. Do I always feel inadequate? Do I always doubt myself? Then if I doubt myself, how can I how can I solve, or how can I fix this? So if it's in a place of criticism, and if for instance in the place of shame, when someone always feels ashamed, or feels like they are not worthy of being in certain places, you need to check, am I this is trauma showing up in it's showing up in my life, and it's making me feel ashamed. Then you check, this emotions, to me, I always say they are indicators that are identifying areas where you need to work on. If I'm
Mm,
feeling ashamed in my place, do I have to work on certain skills? Do I have to, is it showing me that I need to go back to my drawing board, work on this, address these issues? And in most instances is actually addressing, it's actually healing.
mm,
In most, you need to heal from trauma because that's the only way to move forward. That's the only way to actually live a life that is free of imposter syndrome. You need
mm,
to heal from trauma because imposter syndrome feeds from unresolved pain and
mm,
unprocessed emotions. So when all these things are manifesting, or when you are actually exhibiting these characters or these flaws, you go back to the drawing board and check, okay, why am I ashamed? Do I feel like why am I ashamed? Or why am I always trying to be a perfectionist? Why am
mm,
I always trying to um why am I always feeling like a fraud? And
mm,
if I'm feeling like a fraud, do I need to work on what do I need to work on to make sure that I don't feel that way? What do I
mm,
need to work on to make sure I feel competent? And
mm.
then with all these, now to practical steps to help you solve all these. In most cases, people feel like a fraud when they 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 do things, they achieve success, and they feel
Mm.
like it's just luck. I always tell people, when you do things, if it's luck, no one gets lucky for
Over and
no
over
one
and
gets
over
lucky
again.
over and over again. No one gets lucky all their life. So if it's luck, okay, sit down, write down how many times you've been lucky, and then analyze it. Does it look like
Mm,
luck, or does it look
mm.
like someone putting in the work, doing
Work.
the work?
Yeah.
So these are one, sit down, write out all the things you've done. And if you feel like you're inadequate, write down the things you've done before.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you have a project, or in workplaces you've been handed a project and you're scared of of taking charge, of owning
Messing it
that
up.
project. Write
Mm-hmm.
down how many times, how many projects you've done.
Mm-hmm.
Always have a way of always have something, always have um a journal that shows the things you've done, a record that
Mm-hmm.
shows the things you've done, things you've accomplished. It shows that you're not a fraud. It shows that
Mm-hmm.
you have the ability to do things and to be
Mm-hmm.
successful.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes record keeping helps us to navigate through imposter syndrome. It helps
Jemima,
us.
let me chip in on this one before you continue. For me, I'm Christian, and I can see how in our settings, in the Christian settings, humility is such a big thing. But for many, we have never realized that what we call humility may just be self-deprecation and just re-emphasizing that imposter syndrome is okay when it's not. And I just feel very
Mm,
strongly to say that even in the Bible, I think it's Hebrews 10:25 or 35, that says, so do not throw away your confidence, it will be richly rewarded. And at
yeah.
a point when one of the psalmists was very discouraged, he said, this I call to mind and I have hope. And he talks about the things that God has done in his life or the things that God has done in his family. And as you said, write down the things to prove that it's not just sheer luck. Even if you want to blame the grace of God, and I'm saying it's
Yes.
a negative way, also write down
Mm,
how you put in, because sometimes we don't acknowledge how much work we put into something. And even when we
yes,
want to
exactly.
say, they're like, oh, keep quiet, be humble. You know what I mean? Stop being proud. But we are not saying go and tell everybody. We are saying write it down. Prove to yourself that I
Yes,
have done A, I have done B, and I did
yes.
it well. This one, I did a really good job at this. Even if no one saw it, I know I did a good job. So I just wanted to chip that in, Jemima. This is
Thank
useful.
you.
I can see people listening to this and going back to write down these
Yeah.
things. Continue. We're just listening. But please continue. I just had to chip that in.
Well, even the Bible says faith without works is dead. So even
Mm,
when you have faith, you have put in the work for you to have achieved something. You did not. it did not fall from the sky.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I always tell people, always have a record of the things of the people. Sometimes people call it have a success wall. Have
Mm,
a just like you have a vision wall, have a success wall, so that whenever you look at it, you know that I am capable of something. I've actually put in the work and I've achieved things. It's not to glorify yourself, but it's a reminder that you
mm,
have the ability to do that thing and you are not a fraud. And sometimes it also shows you your journey, how far you've come, and it shows
mm,
you there's room for growth. So I always tell people try to document, and I'm a huge I practice that a lot. I have a book where if there's anything I've done, as little as I'm telling you, even if coming on this podcast is one of the things, like I take everything literally. I'm gonna take a screenshot. I'm gonna write it. Today, I was a host on I was a guest on the podcast. And today I hopped on the podcast and I talked about imposter syndrome. That's a win for me.
mm,
And then another
mm,
thing, gratitude. When you
mm,
when you take the time to appreciate how far you've come, you know that life is really um life is really not that hard. You don't
mm,
have to put so much stress on yourself. You need to know
mm,
that one step at a time, and
mm.
eventually things will fall into place.
Yeah.
And also another thing about imposter syndrome, and this is the number one thing that I think I always advise people, therapy.
Mm,
Cannot undermine the power of therapy. Even if you can't afford the therapist, we have so many resources online
mm,
from the in a digital age. There's so many information about
mm,
imposter syndrome from clinical perspective, people, even podcasts just like this. You get to
mm,
hear and you get to pick one or two things on your own. You're doing something. Therapy is not really about sitting down with a
a,
therapist or
a
a
therapist.
psychologist. And
Yeah.
yes, sometimes those people have even taken the initiative of putting it out there for people who
Mm,
can't afford and
mm,
people who don't even know about therapy, or
mm,
people who might feel stigmatized of
mm-hmm,
going to
mm-hmm,
therapy.
mm-hmm,
And then another thing, another practical step would be um um knowing yeah, reframing, knowing where the fault is coming, and that is a
mm,
mindset.
mm, mm, mm,
Imposter syndrome is a belief. And where
mm,
do belief come from? From the mind.
mm.
And there's part that says, as a man thinketh, so is he. So you need
Yeah.
to know that there's a cognitive reframing you need
Mm-hmm,
to do. You
mm-hmm,
need to destroy every foundations
mm-hmm,
of negative belief, negative
mm-hmm,
thoughts, the
mm-hmm,
lies that you have believed, perspective that you have taken on that are not actually yours. Sometimes we take on people's perspective of
mm-hmm,
ourselves.
mm-hmm,
No,
mm-hmm,
you're not good
mm-hmm.
enough. That is it. I am not good enough. Or someone
Yeah.
say, oh, this thing is really not good. Or this thing is not beautiful from their own point of
Let,
view.
let me
And we
even use
take,
something that people can relate to. You go to a
yes.
store, you see a
Mm,
top you like, a gentleman, you see a really nice shirt that you like. You look at it, you can
yes.
imagine yourself wearing that shirt at work or at church or wherever, whichever thing. Then your friend comes along, probably is the try, oh, but it's not nice. Then before you know it, you've already concluded that it's not nice.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
really take on other people's belief. We are sponges as human beings. And if we don't protect the fluid around us, it's very easy. Sometimes it's not your fault. I mean, don't go around blaming yourself for everything you've taken on, but recognize that this is not mine. Someone said, you can't speak well in public because you talk too much, or you can't speak well in public because you're always quiet. It's someone who said it, but you realize that anytime you speak, you're like, oh, that was good. They're like, oh, no, oh, I mean, this is what Jemima is saying. So, yeah, please continue. I just had to jumped. I could not help myself. And luckily,
Yes, yes,
I'm
it's
the host, so I can do
okay.
stuff like that. Please continue.
You know, funny enough, this thing you just mentioned about speaking well, I actually had that challenge too. So, uh, though this is just coming on the podcast, but you know the blog we had before we had this podcast, how it was really a tough one for me.
You did well.
So when I was growing up, I did not I did not speak on time. So
Mm,
I started speaking at the age of 3 or something.
okay.
And I can't remember. So sometimes when I'm conversing with people, and I never really noticed. I
Mm-hmm.
had no idea. And I believe I did not have such problem. But there was a day I was conversing with someone, and I think it was my mom. You know
Mm-hmm.
how African mothers are. You know, to her it's something of a concern. She's worried. Why
Mm-hmm.
is my child like this? Maybe that was where she was coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So she said, "Why is it you don't finish what you're saying? You don't know how to talk to people." And
Oh,
yes, and I tell you, also from that day
really?
to this to this moment, I get so conscious when I talk to people
Oh,
because in my
wow.
head I'm trying to make sure you finish this statement before you say the next one. Till I never believed I had a problem speaking. I had
Mm-hmm.
friends. I talked. I went to parties like all of a sudden one day in my teenage age, and it was not like okay, I had all those. You did not say that all those years. It was in a very critical age where I was,
Yeah,
you know,
finding
cautious
yourself.
about or yes, finding myself. And then I just discovered, oh, I have this flaw. So my
Mm-hmm.
mind is constantly on that flaw, trying to fix it because I am not good enough to talk to people. And and the irony of life,
Mm-hmm.
people I meet, people I talk to, they're like, oh, you have a nice voice. Oh, you
You speak
oh
so well.
speak so well. In my mind, I'll be like, are you trying to
Mock me?
mock me? Is like and it's because someone who knew me, someone who gave birth to me, someone who knows me better said I am not. So
Mm-hmm.
you're just meeting me for the first time in a very short hours and you're telling me this. You don't
Mm-hmm.
know me. And that's imposter syndrome. I am not good enough. And I've turned down so many projects, so many leadership roles. That was then. It's- Whenever anything that has to do with me speaking to people,
Mm-hmm.
addressing people, I have to voice out. I run away from it. So that is
Mm-hmm.
how imposter syndrome had deprived me of so many opportunities to
Let me jump
grow.
in. Are you saying then that when you were able to recognize this connection of where it was from, it helped you then say yes to something like this? Is
Yes, yes.
does it really no,
So
like honestly, does it really help? Something like why go into the past? And why try and figure it out? And why do we really have to do it? Like, and now everybody's in childhood traumas are like, oh goodness, you're tired of these childhood traumas. But do you probably knew you or you probably felt that you didn't speak well. But when you connected
yeah,
it to what your mother said and how important your mother is to you, and whether she said it in the moment out of frustration, maybe she wasn't
yes,
declaring it over your life, but she said, it,
yes,
how did it actually help you? Because right now we've gone into the space where we are saying, does recognizing and understanding this child, does it really help, honestly?
yes. So let me address this like regarding my mom. She was saying it more like from a place of concern. She was
Oh,
worried, like she had to fix, like what is wrong, like with this child. Like I know when a parent is worried, like you
you
know it's
feel it.
something serious. So that was where she was coming from. She's like, why is this happening? Like, what's wrong? So and okay, back to me recognizing that this was linked to
You
the
not in public.
yes, experience I had yeah, with my mom. I and when I discovered that okay, this has fueled imposter syndrome in me because I think that I am not good enough to speak to people and I've turned down projects and I've turned down opportunities to work. I went back to the drawing board and I actually evaluated myself and I said,
Mm,
okay, yeah, and this is where you harness the power of going back, looking at
mm,
past trauma. in a positive light, not in a negative light, because people can go back and be like, oh, you caused this, and you start blaming people.
And
But
you
when you
curse
go
me for
back,
life.
yes, yes. So but when you go back in a positive way, you'll be like, okay, actually, this is what this person is trying to say. Do
Mm,
I really have a problem? Okay, yes, I think there's something here. When
mm,
you identify what the problem is, okay, and then okay, I think I realized that yes, I had some issues like talking to people. Maybe sometimes I talk too fast. Sometimes yeah, I'm someone like I was dealing with a lot. Like there was a time I think I was always anxious. I think I was
mm,
anxious because I didn't want to to have a conversation in the wrong way. So I was
mm.
anxious of what I was trying to, I was cautious
Okay.
and it was making me anxious and it made me speak fast. And when I speak fast, like sometimes you don't get to hear me.
Mm,
So I evaluated the situation very well and I said, okay, and I discovered I discovered some issues and I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to
wow.
work on this. I'm going to work on this. So now that's going back to evaluate what's
Mm,
happened gave me the knowledge, the
mm,
insight on
mm, mm,
areas where I need to
mm,
work on.
mm.
And at
I
the end of the day, it gave me while working on it, I had to know that this is imposter syndrome.
mm,
This is a mindset thing. And all I have to do is walk through it. I have to
mm,
push past it. It
mhm,
doesn't matter what it doesn't matter how I speak.
mhm,
What matters is if I believe I can be better, if I believe I can walk through it, if
mm,
I believe I can be a better person, that is all I need.
mm,
And
mm,
when
mm,
opportunities came, I jump on, even if I'm perfect or I'm not perfect, I'm a perfect speaker or not a perfect speaker, I jump on it. And as you can see today, I'm on calm heart and calm mind. And these are the things I record, and I tell myself, I did this today. I can do better
mm.
tomorrow. Few months,
Oh.
I had my first I moderated a meeting for the
Mhm.
first time. I was so anxious. I know how much I I had to brace myself up. And then when I kept telling myself, there were several times I was like, just tell Ofo that you can't do it,
I would have chased you down.
you're not capable. And I told myself, no, I
Mm,
did that and
mm.
I'm capable of doing it this time. And that's how
Oh.
so far. Remind yourself of the things you've
Mm,
done.
mm,
Remind yourself you're capable of doing it and
mhm,
push through regardless. If you don't feel like you belong, imagine you belong there. And with
mm.
time, you see that you actually belong in the room. I was telling
Wow.
myself, what do I know about imposter syndrome to come and be telling people? I was like, I might not know everything about imposter syndrome, but
Mhm,
there's a knowledge I have about imposter
mm,
syndrome, and the little I have,
mm,
I will come here and I will share
mm.
it. And that's how
Oh
we make change.
wow. Oh wow. Oh wow. Oh, like Jemima, I am so happy you came here. This will probably be one of our very long podcasts that we have had, but the content has been so rich and so empowering. And I love that you've given us practical steps. Just because of time, I won't repeat them. I normally would. But yeah, I mean the gratitude, the writing it down, um, addressing your mindset, going back to traumas and saying what is true and what is not. You don't just go like, it's a trauma, everything is bad, out. Because now you're able to
Yes.
look at what your mother said and go like A, B, and C, and you've been working on it. And then imagine yourself as worthy. And that is what you need.
Yeah.
That's enough. We have only a few
Yeah.
minutes left. I don't want us to go any further. You said so much. You have encouraged me so much. One day I will tell you how you've encouraged me. I can't say it here, but you've encouraged me so much. In fact, maybe I'll
Thank
wait and
you.
achieve it. When I no, in fact, I'll tell you first. And when I achieve it, I'll come back and tell you again. Um, there's so much you have said, and this is a pretty long recording. However,
That's fine.
if there was one thing, just one thing you wanted anyone listening to this to remember, if they forgot everything and just remembered one thing, what would that one thing be? This is the hardest question. For those who have not been on this podcast, when you come, you said this is the hardest question.
Yeah.
Oh, that one can be.
Okay. So one thing I want anyone listening to this podcast to know
Mhm.
about imposter syndrome is that it's a belief,
Mm,
and whatsoever a person believe is, that is who they become.
mm,
You are what you believe.
mm,
You manifest what you believe. You act what you believe.
mm,
And that's why it's important that your belief system, your mindset should always be positive.
mm,
There's something that have been practicing this year, and I always tell I tell myself it's a positive mindset with
mm.
in any situation, in good, in bad. I always tell myself I will first say the positive thing before the negative things will
Before the
come.
negative thing.
First gravitate towards the positive things, positive outcomes, positive actions
Mm,
before the negative things will come.
mm,
And believe that your success and your achievements
mm,
are a result of your hard work.
mm,
And obviously, there are other factors that are part of success story. But wherever you find yourself, you should
mhm,
know that you deserve the success, the achievements, and accomplishments you have made in life.
mm, 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 mm. Thank you so much, Jemima. This has been Calm Hearts, Calm Minds, and NOCS Heart podcast. We believe in making mental health victories more relevant, more relatable, and more accessible in our society. If you have not found any relevance in what Jemima has told us today, I don't know what to tell you because I have found so much. It's even scary. Like, I'm like, okay, I have to go back and look at these things. If you haven't found it relatable, I think everybody knows someone who has turned a leaf. And the things that Jemima said have been weighty. Some of us don't know people like that, but it's so it makes the victory of any level of imposter syndrome accessible to us too. She's given us tools that we can use. Jemima, God bless you. Thank you so much. This is amazing. If you are watching this, please remember to like, comment, subscribe. Share it with someone so that they won't come and talk with you, maybe. Or maybe they would, you know. And Jemima and I are on LinkedIn. You can follow us. Look at some of the information we are sharing. I find her content very helpful, and that's why we are on this podcast today. Thank you so
Yes.
much, Jemima. It's just been an
Thank you
absolute
so
joy.
much.
So for everybody
Thank you so
watching this,
much.
we look forward to bringing you the next episode and we look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Calm Heart, Calm Minds, and NOCS Heart podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and we hope you learned something new. We look forward to you joining the next episode. We can't wait to see you soon. Bye.